I want to introduce you to four people today, and honestly, you probably know all of them. In fact, depending on your age, you might literally be one of them. First, there's Graham, he's 71. Then we have Sarah, who's 49. There's James, 35. And finally, Mia, who is 22. Now, we've got four entirely different people living in four totally different decades of life and facing completely different economic realities. Yet, despite seeming to do absolutely everything right, they are all falling into the exact same hidden financial trap. Today, we're going to look at this invisible fault line and how we build wealth. It's a crack in the foundation that, well, nobody really notices until the floor starts to tilt. But hold on, before we uncover what this trap actually is, we really need to clarify what it isn't. Because when we hear the phrase financial mistake, our minds immediately jump to those obvious blunders, right? Like severe overspending, racking up crazy credit card debt, gambling, or just some dramatic moment of poor judgment. But that is not what this is. The people falling into this trap are actually pretty responsible. They budget, they think before they buy. And honestly, that's exactly what makes this trap so incredibly dangerous. Because from the inside, it doesn't feel like a mistake at all. Actually, scratch that. It feels like winning. It feels perfectly normal, like responsible progress. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to journey through the decades and look at 1. The boomer property illusion. 2. The Gen X lifestyle creep. 3. The millennial experience culture. 4. The Gen Z aesthetic performance. And finally, number 5, escaping the wealth trap. So what does this all mean? At its core, the trap is this. At some point in your life, the world around you defines an unwritten set of rules for what doing well is supposed to look like. And I emphasize look like, not what it actually means in true net worth or actual financial security. This is what we call your generation's arrival signal. It might be a certain kind of house, a specific wardrobe, or maybe posting a photo from that perfect balcony on the Amalfi Coast. And the thing is, nobody hands you a manual for this. You just kind of absorb it from the culture around you. Then, slowly and quietly, without any single dramatic moment, we start building our entire financial lives around that image, the signal, instead of the actual, boring substance of wealth. All right, up first, the boomer property illusion. Now, what's really interesting about this is Graham's journey. Graham grew up in a post-war world where renting essentially meant you hadn't arrived yet. Homeownership was the ultimate, undisputed signal. So he took out the biggest mortgage the bank would give him back in the late 1970s, which, to be fair, was the exact right playbook at the time. But the trap wasn't buying the house. The trap was what happened next. For over 40 years, Graham poured his hard-earned cash into maintaining that signal. We're talking a sunroom addition in '96, an extra bedroom in 2003, landscaping, repaving the driveway, buying a new furnace, the whole shebang. Every single dollar that went into maintaining that house was a dollar that didn't go into a diversified portfolio. And we really need to look at this with radical empathy, you guys. Graham wasn't being materialistic. His mistake was simply believing the house was his entire plan. Today, his arrival signal is absolutely gleaming. He's got this beautiful, paid-off house that's worth 5 or 6 times what he paid for it. But what about the substance? Well, his company pension was restructured and reduced back in the 90s, and he's only sitting on about 4 years of liquid savings. He essentially concentrated almost everything he had into a single illiquid asset. So now he's asset-rich but cash-poor. He spent his entire working life maintaining the appearance of wealth, while completely underfunding the actual mechanics of it. Moving right along to Section 2, Gen X lifestyle creep. Let's shift gears and talk about 49-year-old Sarah. Gen X really came of age during the huge rise of the dual-income household, right? So for them, the arrival signal wasn't just a house, it was the entire lifestyle. If we trace her trajectory, her income growth is a genuine huge success story. She started at $19,000 and eventually crossed well into the 6 figures. But notice how her lifestyle perfectly mirrored that income growth. At 27, getting a raise meant a slightly better apartment. At 30, a big promotion meant leasing a much nicer car. At 36, crossing 6 figures meant a bigger house and a way better school district. I mean, she earned it, right? But then come the micro upgrades. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Weeknight takeout quietly became a regular habit instead of a special occasion. We're talking pricey gym memberships, massive streaming bundles, organic meal kit deliveries, expensive weekend travel, soccer clubs for the kids. And here's the kicker. Every single one of those upgrades was completely affordable in isolation. She genuinely never made a bad decision. But this is the textbook definition of lifestyle creep. Over 20 whole years, her savings rate barely moved an inch. The gap between her income and her expenses stayed roughly exactly the same. It just got way more expensive to maintain. She just assumed that earning more naturally meant spending more. Which brings us to Section 3, Millennial Experience Culture. Okay, to really understand 35-year-old James, we absolutely have to validate the context here. Millennials got hit with the 2008 financial crisis exactly as they were entering the workforce. Entry-level jobs just evaporated, wages flatlined, housing prices climbed out of reach, and student debt completely ballooned. The traditional economic contract was totally rewritten, and nobody bothered to tell them until they were already locked in. Because traditional signals, mortgages, building equity, pensions, were suddenly out of reach, they understandably gravitated towards signals they could afford, and the culture didn't just allow this, it actively celebrated it. The new rule became collect moments, not possessions. The arrival signal shifted away from real estate and moved to a curated, lived life of travel, music festivals, and these boutique experiences. It was heavily marketed to them as this enlightened, minimalist approach to money. So the crucial point really boils down to this number: $3,000. James spent his late 20s collecting truly extraordinary memories, like taking a beautiful, sprawling road trip through Portugal. And let's be clear, those experiences were completely valid and real. But now, at 35, James only has $3,000 invested. He's basically been using these experiences not just for fun, but as a quiet coping mechanism for an underlying low-level financial anxiety about his future. Live your best life is a wonderful motto, but man, it is not a retirement plan. The experiences were incredible for sure, but they just don't compound. Let's look at Section 4, Gen Z Aesthetic Performance. This brings us to 22-year-old Mia, and on paper, she is the most financially literate person in her family's entire history. She can casually talk about dollar-cost averaging, ETFs, and passive income over dinner. But let's take a peek at her cash flow. Gen Z's arrival signal isn't a house, it's not a sprawling suburban lifestyle, and it isn't even a full passport. It's a highly visible online aesthetic. She actually puts an impressive $50 a month into her investment account, which, hey, is a really great start. But she is simultaneously spending $300 a month on items whose primary function is just looking good for an audience. Think about a Dyson Airwrap for a Get Ready With Me video, or specific room decor that just pops on camera. And here is the cruel twist of the Gen Z trap. We call it the performance gap. Mia actually has way more financial knowledge than any prior generation did at her age. But she's prioritizing the appearance of financial literacy for an audience over actually practicing it at scale. It's literally the financial equivalent of reading every single book you can find about fitness and then just skipping the gym entirely. She's prioritizing the aesthetic of wealth over the boring, invisible, everyday mechanics of compounding wealth. Finally, Section 5, Escaping the Wealth Trap. And this brilliantly illustrates the good news here, the incredibly empowering news. None of these people are actually bad with money. They really aren't. They just faithfully delivered the exact signal their specific culture asked of them. To break free from this, we just need to rewire our instincts, and there are 3 universal steps to do it. Step 1, acknowledge the trap. Step 2, prioritize invisible assets. And Step 3, delay the visible lifestyle costume. You have to be willing to look a little less wealthy than you actually are today so that your actual wealth can grow faster for tomorrow. You absolutely have to separate the signal from the substance. So how does this actually play out in real life? Well, for Graham, it would have meant keeping the house, sure, but splitting his home improvement funds with a retirement account. For Sarah, it means banking half of every single raise. Like, go ahead and upgrade the car or take the vacation, but force the rest into something boring and invisible that compounds. For James, it's taking 1 big trip a year instead of 3, and automating a monthly transfer into an index fund so he doesn't even have to think about it. And for Mia, it's making the investment number itself the actual flex, quadrupling her contribution instead of buying the next aesthetic prop for her videos. If you take away just one rule from this entire explainer today, please let it be this: assets first, lifestyle second, every single time. And listen, this is absolutely not a permanent vow of austerity. You aren't giving up nice things forever. No way. It is simply a smart strategy you follow until your investments throw off enough returns that your lifestyle upgrades are genuinely and sustainably paid for by your wealth, rather than your daily labor. You have to build the substance before you display the signal. So I want to leave you with a question to really sit with today. Which version of the trap are you in right now? Is it the property illusion? Is it that gradual, quiet lifestyle creep, the experience culture, or maybe the aesthetic performance? This tribe only works in silence, you guys. It feeds on our completely natural human instinct to signal our status to the tribe. But the moment you name your trap, it immediately loses its power over you. I really encourage you to share this explainer with someone in your life to start an honest conversation about this. Decide today that you would rather actually be wealthy than simply look wealthy. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.